Sometimes the simplest of things can change the world. This expression can be related to the most popular game of 2020, Among Us. This small indie game was made by Innersloth, and it exploded at a rate that's unheard of in gaming. Originally released back in 2018, the game struggled to have an active player base. It struggled to have any more than just a few players active at any time. This was until June of 2020, where the game exploded overnight to a state where millions of people were all downloading the game. So, what the hell made this game grow its player base so fast? That's pretty simple. The most watched YouTubers and streamers began to play the game. When you have people such as PewDiePie, KSI, Dream, and MrBeast playing the game, millions of people are going to be exposed to it all at once. The game was also offered on PC for $5 and mobile for free. These two platforms had the ability to be cross-compatible, and this opened up the opportunity for almost everybody to play the game. The thing that stood out the most about the game was not only how simple it was, and how easy it was to play and understand, but how it visually looked. Among Us is a game where up to 10 players are on a single map. Anywhere from 1 to 3 of them are imposters, and these players have to kill the crewmates. The crewmates are trying to do tasks to win the game. When an imposter kills a crewmate, a body is left, and when it's found, it stops the game, and all the players have to gather for a meeting, and the goal is to figure out what happened. The meetings are the center point of the entire game. This is the only point that any communication can happen. You have to prove your innocence to avoid being chosen to be kicked out of the game. Those who are good at diverting attention and lying through their teeth are the ones who can manipulate the entire game, and those who can't hold up an act are called out super fast. With so many different personalities colliding at one hectic moment, the game hits its highest entertainment value. The gameplay of the game is very similar to other games such as the Garry's Mod game mode Trouble in Terrorist Town and the Flash game Town of Salem. The thing that stood Among Us out though was its design. The playable characters are bright colors with very simple shapes. The level layouts are extremely simplistic that even if you're just wandering around, you can have a basic understanding of where you're going. And do you know who this would appeal to the most? The younger audiences that a lot of the bigger content creators target nowadays, and what YouTube as a platform promotes the most. All of these factors on top of the world being in a lockdown, and more people than ever being online, led to this game being the game that everybody has heard of. And if you spent any amount of time online, you more than likely have seen something about this game. So, why isn't this game really a thing anymore? A good amount of the content creators have slowly started to shift to a different game, and the constant flow of jokes and memes have been slowly fading away. And there's a pretty big reason to why this happened. The growth of the game was too extreme for a development team who at the time only had 5 employees. The supply of content could not meet the demand of the players, and with such a simple game, eventually, after hundreds of hours and thousands of games, the magic just starts to fade away. This was the biggest issue plaguing the game. The amount of time it took for new content to be released was simply not fast enough to meet the ever-increasing demand of millions of people. Even things like known bugs remained unfixed for good chunks of time. Let's set the record straight though. This wasn't entirely an issue on the developers. Innersloth only had 5 people working on the game at the time. This was an extremely small indie studio. At the time too, their goal was actually to work on a new game called Among Us 2, before the original game got so popular, so all of their focus was on a different project at the time of this one exploding, so overnight they had to shift back to focus on their first game. Innersloth wanted to update their game, but they were held back by simply lacking the resources to pump out content. There could be an argument to hire more developers, but this would bring more issues to the table, such as requiring the company to focus on making sure that the new developers were properly trained and knew how to work their game. Among Us is a game where the players make their own experience. But once it's become stale and predictable, it loses the aspect that made it fun. The idea was amplified by the lack of new and original content for the game, and this is what led to the massive decline in players. Since the peak player count of 438,000 players on Steam in September of 2020, the game has now fallen to around 31,000 or so active players as of May of 2021. Since its massive growth in popularity, there have only been a few fixes to the game. some very small features such as a quick chat to help players on mobile, and then a new map that came out 6 months after its original growth. Among Us was a game that became way too popular, way too fast. Content creators lost interest because the content became stale, and their biggest audience being younger kids would soon follow the trend of losing interest. All of this led to the game being in the state it's in now. But 30,000 active players is nothing to scoff at, especially for a small studio, but it's a fraction of what it once was. Among Us left a mark like no other game. A growth this extreme might never happen again. The game sparked so many different memes and allowed so many different content creators to collaborate with each other. This game made the dark days of the pandemic a bit brighter and allowed the people stuck in their homes to have some fun. And in the end, that's all that matters. This game is one that might fade out in popularity, but it will stick with people for a while. I don't believe Among Us failed by any means or is a bad game. The game thrived and it's still going somewhat strong today. And it provided a lot of good memories. The developers tried their hardest to do new things for the game, but for a lot of people it just wasn't enough. One day, a big update might hit the game and revive it to its original state, but we're gonna have to wait and see.